Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Sportsocology show. I'm your host, Bill Knutson. It's Saturday, March 1st, 2014, and I was just thinking as I was doing some preparation for the show that we're kind of in a lull in the sports world on March 1st. The Super Bowl's been over for just about a month now. Spring training is just starting to get into swing, but I'm not really super into baseball yet. Paying some more attention now to the NBA, the National Hockey League, paying more attention to college basketball, getting myself more familiar with what's going on in those two sports. But this is kind of a tough month. No pro football, no college football. Like I said, baseball hasn't started yet. So trying to keep my interests going by paying attention a little more to a few other things. But I've got a couple of things, still to talk about. So let me get right into it. The first thing I wanted to talk about is, again, Richie Incognito from the Dolphins. This story seems to be a story that really doesn't want to die. And in his latest incident, he was observed smashing his Ferrari with a bat, something to that effect, and I'm hearing that his parents are getting divorced, which I understand can be kind of a traumatic thing that happens in somebody's life, but normally that I associate that kind of trauma with children, not really with a grown man. Not that you're not upset about it, but I'm thinking like, if my parents were to get divorced, I wouldn't be traumatized about it because I'm a grown man. As a child, I get it, but as a grown man, not so much. You should be able to adjust to that just fine. I'm glad to hear that he checked himself into a psychiatric hospital out in Arizona because obviously before this latest incident with him bashing his car up, he's got a lot of issues going on. Back to the bullying with his teammates, especially Jonathan Martin, and things like that. He's obviously got something wrong in the head right now to be acting the way he does and saying the things the way he was, things like that. With him bullying his teammates, again, like the parents getting divorced, you normally associate bullying with kids. So, but it happens obviously with adults. You just normally don't hear about it, but obviously he was bullying Jonathan Martin, and say what you will about Martin. I mean, Martin's 6'4", 300 and something pounds, just like Richie Incognito is. I don't understand how you can get bullied as a grown man like that, being bullied by another man. I think that shows a kind of a weakness in Jonathan Martin's character as well. But Incognito is totally in the wrong here, don't get me wrong. To treat people like that is totally inexcusable. And now with the psychiatric issues that he's going through now, I'm thinking that Incognito will never find a spot again in the NFL. Even though he actually was a Pro Bowl player, I just think with all of these issues, it's going to be too much for anybody to want to deal with. I could be wrong. That's just my opinion, but I think his days in the NFL will be finished. Jonathan Martin, he's already said he doesn't want to go back to Miami, and I don't think he ever would be a Dolphin. I don't think the Dolphins would want him back either. And because of the, for lack of a better term, weakness of character with Jonathan Martin, I think that in any locker room that he may be a part of, I don't think the respect would be there, not only from the coaching staff, but I think his teammates wouldn't respect him either, because in the NFL you have to be tough. And, he wouldn't stand up to Incognito, even if it took like a physical altercation and they just trade blows. It probably would have ended right there. If they had just traded blows, the bullying probably would have stopped, because we know how bullies operate. If you stand up and fight back against a bully, more times than not, that's going to end the bullying incident. So I don't think that Jonathan Martin is going to have a spot in the NFL just for that, a weakness of character, and I don't think anybody will respect him enough to want him to be a part of their organization. But I hope, that he does get a chance and, get his career back going and his life together. But anyway, I'm going to move on to something else. I've done a show in the past about NASCAR, and as I've mentioned, I'm not a NASCAR fan growing up in New York City. But now that I live down in Georgia, just outside of Atlanta, lots of NASCAR fans here. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Dale Earnhardt Jr. winning the Daytona 500 last weekend. Now, I'm happy for him. He's a nice guy and everything. Again, not a big fan. It wasn't a big deal to me. But it is a big deal in the NASCAR world. And I will restate what I've stated before. This is the second time that Earnhardt has won the Daytona 500, but I still stand by my statement that he will never win a championship. I just don't think he's good enough to win a championship. He's come close a couple of times, but for some reason I just don't think that he's ever going to win the title. And it also brings up the point with him winning the Daytona 500 last weekend, that is the biggest race of the season as the first race. One of the several things that I don't like about NASCAR is the biggest race, the Super Bowl of NASCAR, if you will, being opening day. Why is it that they don't do that in any other sport? Because you build up to the championship. And now, as I've said before, with the new point system in NASCAR, the Daytona 500 being the last race would be even bigger than it is now, because you will actually be deciding the champion for the season at the biggest race of the season, the biggest race in your sport. Right now, Junior won the Daytona 500 last weekend, but it didn't decide anything, and it's the biggest race of the season. Now it's like a letdown for all the other races during the season, because the biggest race of the season is already finished. That drives me crazy, and I did a show weeks back with a couple of friends of mine who are more of an expert about it than I am, and they had a couple of points, as to why it was first, the biggest one being tradition. It's like, well, baseball has a lot more tradition than NASCAR, and baseball has changed things over the year. The NFL has a lot more of a tradition than NASCAR does, and they've made adjustments over the years. It's like not everything could be the way it was 75, 100 years ago. You have to move with the times. You have to change certain things to make your sport better. And all the other sports, and rightfully so, you build up to the Super Bowl. You build up to the World Series, the NBA championship, the Stanley Cup finals. You work your way and work hard all year to the biggest event in your sport. You do not have the biggest event in your sport opening day. I will never change my opinion on that. It won't matter what anybody tells me, any good information they give me. I'm still never going to agree with that because it makes no sense. But anyway, I digress. I'm going to move on to my last topic of the day, the NBA. I've got a couple of issues that have been going on lately with the NBA that I wanted to address. The first one is Brian Colangelo. Now, I'm not sure if you were aware, 2 or 3 years ago, he was the GM of the Toronto Raptors. And he just came out recently and said that he tried to tank games at the end of the season to try and move up in the draft order for the Raptors to get a better pick, and he came out and admitted that he did that. So, in my opinion, he should never be allowed to be in any position, GM or otherwise, in sports, because he just came out and deliberately said that he tried to mess with the integrity of the game. And you just cannot have that in sports. No matter what else goes on, You cannot have anything that messes with the integrity of the game. When you and I buy a ticket to go to a game, there cannot be any doubt in our mind that the athletes are out there trying to win. No matter what we see, what we hear, what goes on at the game, it has to be honest. It has to be that the guys are trying their best to win every time they step on the field, the court, the ice, whatever it is they do. Regardless of their record, you cannot deliberately lose to try and get a higher draft pick. It isn't fair because of many reasons, but one of the reasons, maybe to a lesser extent, what about people that, are out in Las Vegas or in Atlantic City or whatever, and they're gambling their money on these games? Now, whether they win or lose has to be honest competition. It can't be that people are winning or losing because players or coaches, or in this case, even a GM, is doing what they can to make Toronto lose. It has to be when you're betting on a game, when you're watching a game, when you're playing a game, that it is honest competition, that the players are doing their best to win. But even more important than that, if you're playing for the Toronto Raptors or any other team that's having a bad year, you have to have pride in yourself. You have to have pride in your profession. You have to go out there, regardless of your record. You have to give your best to win. It is not your job to make sure that the organization gets better draft picks. That is not your job. Your job is to go out there and do the best that you can to win every single time you step onto the ice, the court, the baseball field, the football field, whatever it is that you do. You have to go out there and do your best. And if you think about it, if the professional athletes are going out there deliberately tanking, you're basically stealing money from the fans because you're not giving your best effort. You're stealing money, from the people that are paying you, even though in this instance, it's possible that the people that were paying the guys for the Raptors were trying to get people to tank. But if you don't give your best effort, you're basically stealing money from your employers. Now, granted, we all live in the real world. We work, we have jobs, and, speaking for myself, I'm sure everybody else too, we don't give our best effort every single minute that we're on the clock. I get it. But at my job, I have never gone there and deliberately tried to do something to hurt, or to mess with the integrity of the organization that I work for. That's just not right. My pride in myself wouldn't allow me to do that. And there is no way that Brian Colangelo should ever be allowed back in any position in charge of a sports franchise, because messing with the integrity of the game, you just cannot have that. That is the number one rule, that the integrity of the game, regardless of what else goes on, the integrity has to be the same. Now, another thing I want to move on to is Raymond Felton of my hometown New York Knicks. He makes me sick, and everybody like him makes me sick. And what I mean everybody like him is all of these guys that want to carry around illegal weapons. They want to beat up on their women. They want to, use all these illegal drugs. And I've mentioned it on previous shows. All the speeding tickets, the violence. I mean, I know that they're coming from broken homes, and they're not very well educated. I don't care what school that they went to and whatever. They're not educated. They're there because they're great athletes, not because they're great students. So I'm really not surprised. They're coming from broken homes, not very well educated. So obviously that's going to make it much more likely that they're going to commit crimes. It doesn't mean you will commit crimes, because obviously there are plenty of people out there from broken homes, not very well educated, that would never commit a crime in their lives. But it is statistically proven that, more criminals are lower educated from broken homes And it's not a surprise that these kind of things are happening without the lack of education, and again, from homes that are dysfunctional and things of that nature. It's also a reason why a lot of these guys blow through all their money and end up not educated, but bankrupt, because they're not educated about how to handle money. They come from no money, and all of a sudden millions of dollars are dropped into their lap, and they don't have the proper education, even though they have rookie symposiums in all of the sports telling you how to handle your money and things you should do, things you shouldn't do. But these guys think they're invincible and that they know everything, and obviously they don't know very much. And they find out the hard way, and it's impossible for me to have sympathy for people that have tens and tens of millions of dollars and they go bankrupt, and they have more money than I will ever see in 10 lifetimes, 20 lifetimes, and they blow through it all because they're not smart enough to listen to people that actually are the smart ones and are trying to help them to avoid these pitfalls. And again, it's not everybody. There are plenty of guys that don't have the education and things that are doing just fine because they listen to the people that actually know more than they do about these things. And that's what it's all about. You have to listen to the people that can help you avoid all of this. But I'm really tired of this in professional sports. All you hear about is guys like Raymond Felton with the weapons, and other people beating their wives, and driving 1,000,000 miles an hour, drunk driving, reckless driving, drugs, weapons, violence. We don't hear nearly enough about the great people that are out there. But it's not just in the sports world, it's in the everyday world. Every day you turn on your news and you hear about the drug dealings and the shootings and the violence and all that, and it's almost like a small footnote when there's a positive influence out there, because I guess that doesn't make news like the negative stories do. But I think that's all I have today. I know the show is kind of short, but it's kind of a lull this week. There's really nothing too exciting going on. I just wanted to mention a couple of those things that were bothering me. But as we start getting back into baseball and basketball gets, the NBA starts getting down to the wire. March Madness is coming up in college basketball, so obviously that'll be plenty to talk about. But it's kind of a lull right now. Nothing super exciting going on, but I just wanted to throw a couple of things out there for this week. And I'll be back next week at some time, next Friday, next Saturday, depending on, life happens. So I don't have like a set schedule that I'm going to do a show every Friday at noon or every Saturday or whatever. It's every week approximately, might be 6 days, 8 days, but approximately every week. I'm going to put some things together to talk about, and I appreciate you listening very much out there to my show today. I want to ask you to follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and it shows you there how to do that. Please go to YouTube and listen to my shows, and when you do, please hit that you'll subscribe. It will let you know whenever I upload a show. It will notify you so you can listen to the newest show that I've just put on. And please leave comments, even if there's something you don't like or something you wish you would hear. I mean, I enjoy doing what I do, but I want to hear from people. I do hear from people, like in my life in person, that listen to me and they let me know, hey, I really like this, or can you do a little more of this? And one person actually said, can you cut back on something and do more of this? And all of the feedback I get, I'm like a sponge. I absorb it all, and I figure out a way to input it into what I'm doing and what I'm saying. I just started about a month ago. I'm not an expert, and I'm working towards being an expert and, eventually being on video and, all that stuff that you see that with the professionals. So right now I'm just doing my thing the way I do it, getting advice from other people. I'm beginning to get a little advice from people in the business that are going to educate me because I want to be as entertaining as possible. And I'll get better and better as time goes on, and I'm looking forward to hearing all of your feedback. So please go to YouTube and subscribe and follow me on Twitter and Facebook. And I thank you all very much out there. You all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time, America, wherever you are.